Hey folks, it's Lucy at Ballyhoo Creations, and I wanted to talk today about 60 weight thread or lightweight thread. This is thread that it's still for machine embroidery, but it's thinner than your usual thread. And the reason I want to talk about it, Dime sent me this really nice set of 60 weight thread. There's 10 different spools in this set, and each of these are a 60 weight polyester instead of the regular 40 weight. So they're thinner than what you would usually use in your embroidery machine. And let's talk about different ways you can use this. If you've been doing machine embroidery for any amount of time, you probably know that when you're doing small lettering, small text, like these are about 5 millimeters tall, then you would want to use a thinner thread. This is a regular 40 weight polyester here. Let me get up close so you can get a good look at that. And it's not as, I don't know, it's kind of bulky and it doesn't look great. Whereas the 60 weight thread down here, because it's thinner, it just looks more clean. So if you're doing like logos and things like that, a lot of people know to use the thinner thread, the 60 weight, for something like that when you're doing small letters. And that's typically what people think about for 60 weight thread is lettering. But there are other things you can do too. So let me show you some examples when I've been playing around with this stuff and show you what I've come up with. I don't use my embroidery machine for a whole lot of lettering, but I do like to do these sketchy type of designs. And you might be able to notice this again is done with the 40 weight thread, and this one is with the 60. And hopefully you can see, you get a little bit better detail with the 60. It's just kind of a sharper, crisper line when you're doing these kind of sketchy or line work designs. But as soon as you move over to a satin stitch, get up close on that and see if you can tell, that satin stitch looks kind of jagged. It does on the 40 weight too though. I mean, it's still kind of a jaggedy line. So you definitely want to look at a design to see if it has satin stitches, even really thin ones like this. That might not look as good with the 60 weight thread, but when you are doing things like red work, black work, sketch designs, line work, these look really nice in the 60 weight. You might even notice this t-shirt that I'm wearing. I'll show you a close-up. And yes, I did take this t-shirt off, but no, I'm not behind the camera naked right now, sorry. You can see that the lines are really crisp in this, and I used the Dime 60 weight polyester thread in a black, a silver, and a navy blue, and it turned out really nice. It's a very clean, sharp, crisp design because I used the thinner threads for all of these little lines of stitching. I didn't stitch up any examples, but if you like doing freestanding lace, try the 60 weight thread for both the top and the bobbin thread when you make your freestanding lace. It'll give you a little bit more of an airy, finer quality because the thread is lighter and thinner. Of course, you can also use your, this kind of thread, this 60 weight thread, in your bobbin, because bobbin thread is polyester 60 weight. It's that thinner thread. Some machines prefer the 90 weight. This is the 60, but you can go ahead and load up bobbins with this kind of thread and use it in your bobbin too, especially if you're doing towels or something like that and you want the back of the towel to match the front. Consider something like that. You might not get exactly the same color as your top thread, but you can at least have it so that the back side of your towel has some, different colors and things going on. Instead of just a white or a black bobbin, you can change colors with this 60 weight and still not add a lot of bulk to the back of the towel. And because my favorite thing to do with the embroidery machine is to make art dolls that, move and pose and stuff. This is one of my elves. And I like to use this thin 60 weight thread to do the little line work details on the face. And then when I'm coloring in the eyes, it still gives me a nice stitch line for my border to keep the ink from running. But I like that kind of watercolory look versus, some machine embroidered doll faces, they have a lot of stitches, and that's kind of not my style. I have those as well. Designs that you could purchase, but I really like the ones. This is where I started out, just doing the sketchy stuff and then painting the eyes in. So this is a 40 weight regular embroidery thread, and then this would be the 60 weight. And you can see how, look at the eyebrows on the 60 weight here with the thinner thread, you get more detail in there. Whereas with these eyebrows on this guy, they're kind of more blurred in, it's just, they both look good, but I do like that really sharp, fine detail that the 60 weight thread gives me when I'm doing some of these small doll heads. So that's a few different ways that you could use this 60 weight thread. Obviously, load up your bobbin with it and change different colors. You can do your freestanding lace with it, top and bobbin. Small text, obviously, you would want to use the finer thread because it's going to give you a much better result, especially in little logo thingies. And then the line work and stuff. another really good place to use that. And also on the lettering, something I did forget to say is look at the back. I didn't change the tension or anything, but the back is really bulky and kind of raised up. It would be really scratchy on your skin, whereas the 60 weight, it's much flatter to the back. It's the exact same needle and bobbin in here. It's just the 60 weight thread here and the 40 there. So it really does make a difference, not just on the front in the detail, but on the back. It's just a nicer result. Another thing, I did not change my needle. I used the 7511 on everything you see here, but when I did this doll face here, I did switch over to a smaller needle. So that's a tip. These are embroidery needles. Again, I got these from Dime, and these are the size 65-9, which is a smaller size than the regular 75-11 that we would typically have. So there's the 65-9, there's like a 70-10 is another option, but this is just a little bit smaller needle, so it pokes smaller holes in your fabric. And speaking of fabric, if you want really clean results for the finer threads, use a fabric that is woven and has a higher thread count, because the more threads that you have tightly woven together, the needle can go in between those threads and not be so jaggedy. If you look closely, again, with my example, you might even be able to see some light between those needle holes, because this is a cheap woven cotton that I got from Walmart. I think this is the Walmart quilting, and it's great for practicing and doing test stitch outs. It's wonderful, but if you really want a high quality result, like you can see the threads in here, and when the needle penetrates in between those, it separates them, and it's not as good of a result. A higher thread count on your fabric, or more threads tightly woven. If you go to a quilt shop to buy fabrics, you're going to get a nicer stitch out than I have here. Okay, so those are my tips. If you're working with the thinner 60 weight polyester like the set that I showed you from Dime, you don't have to use the smaller needle. It's not absolutely necessary, but if you really want a clean, very detailed, crisp design, especially on small things like lettering, I would recommend the smaller needles, because I did notice a difference with those. Use a tightly woven fabric if you're doing that. And also, you may have to play with your machine tension. This really depends on your machine and how well it automatically adjusts. But on some machines, you might need to change the tension setting and just tighten it up a little bit so that you get a better thread balance. Just look at the back of your design to see, is it too bulky or not. Same old rules for tension apply on the 60 weight thread as any other thread. Oh, I almost forgot. One other reason you might want to try a 60 weight thread is if you're doing garment sewing or something like that, and you're doing fine fabrics like chiffons or silks, you can use it in your sewing machine to stitch seams as well. And the lighter thread will make your seam lie a little flatter when you press it closed, things like that, press it open, whatever. It's going to be a little lighter, and you get a nice crisper finish on those very lightweight fabrics on your seams. So that's just a little tip from the garment sewing tailoring industry. You can also use those thinner, finer threads for garment sewing as well. It is strong enough to hold your seams. And I just throw that in there because when I get a specialty thread, I'm always thinking, like, this is going to take up space in my sewing studio. How much use am I going to get? Like I said, if it were just for small text, which I rarely do, I wouldn't really have a need for these 60 weight polyester threads. I probably wouldn't buy them myself. But because I like the sketchy line work type of designs, I do have, even before Dime sent me this set that I have, I've had some other 60 weight polyester threads that I would do, like I just get a couple colors like black or charcoal and then do some of the line work designs. But then I also realized, yeah, I can always load a bobbin with it and use it for that. I can sew seams with it in my sewing machine if I want to. And like I said, the freestanding lace is another thing. Try it out if you're into that. I don't do much of that either, except maybe for this channel, just to show you what it's all about. Okay, so that's all I had to say about this 60 weight thread set that Dime had sent me. I appreciate them sending me some products to make videos and share with you and show you like what this kind of stuff, like what can you do with this? And I told you, that's what you can do with it. There's a whole bunch of things. I will link to this set down in the description box. I will also show you like where the designs came from. Like this is an Urban Threads that I'm wearing on my shirt, and I think the sewing or the embroidery machine came from maybe Creative Fabrica, so I'll go find those links in case you're like, hey, I need that design. I'll show you where those come from. They won't be affiliate links this time. I'm kind of moving away from that, and I will talk about that more in my next video. So I'll see you later, folks.